question one is that if this template ends up being accepted and the recommendation goes through, mana whenua as well as local boards will then be consulted.
That's correct.
Depending on what happens as part of that consultation, and if there is any significant changes from local boards around the template, it will then come back to the governing body.
Yes, the template will be used to begin the drafting of the relationship agreement, and they would affirm that at the beginning, I would expect. And if there's any substantial changes, then it would have to come back.
Has the template gone through legal section?
Yes, it has.
Any issues from legal section in regards to the template we have in item 13?
No, nothing was flagged from our legal overview of the document, the template and the relationship agreement in the next item.
Are you aware of any of the local boards who have already started negotiations with mana whenua in their local board areas?
Yes, there are. There are. And these relationship agreements, we've started discussions with Ngāti Tamoho. Waikato Tainui have signalled that they are ready to go and have enter into a relationship agreement. Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei have begun discussions, and yeah, so I can provide a list of those.
Did you know that the southern chairs and through there have had negotiations with their respective mana whenua groups around an agreement relationship?
Not this agreement relationship, they
Well, I'm talking, I think, Councillor Newman.
We certainly
not
are.
you.
Councillor Philippines got the floor, please.
Thank you.
Yes, in terms of local board participation in decision making?
Okay, so you're aware?
Yes.
Okay, so you also, how many legacy agreements do we have with mana whenua? I know that West Auckland and Manukau, but do you know of any others of the old TLAs?
There are a number, and I don't have that schedule with me, but I'll be happy to provide that. And it just helps to, this process helps to, for those legacy agreements to be updated, refreshed, to bring into a new Auckland Council context.
And this template, therefore, will be used as at least a vehicle for us to then, just another interruption from Councillor Newman, but I would then look at that template as a vehicle for us to at least acknowledge the legacy agreements that we had.
Aye, that's correct.
Kia ora. Thank you, and again, I reserve my right to speak, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Got a few questions. What is what's the urgency of approving this template at this point? Are we on any critical timeline?
The are we on a critical timeline? The timeline's driven by the expression of the previous governing body to us to get on with formalising these relationship agreements. If that view's changed, then the timeline can change. Although I have to tell you that expectations within mana whenua and certainly within some local boards are that we are moving now on this.
Okay, okay. And would it be fair to say that these relationship agreements substitute for the memorandums of understanding that some of the legacy councils had?
That's right.
Okay. Would it be helpful to have some time to test this template, to put up some examples, and I'm thinking in particular around where there's some conflict and there's an issue resolution process here that involves mediation and the like, and I'm just instances where we've got a problem depending on what the relationship is, we could come unstuck. And I'm just mindful that I don't see much in the way of any testing here, any examples. Would that be helpful?
We probably have an example in front of us in terms of the Rodney one. I'm now believing that I should have taken item 12 before 13 and not the other way around. Sorry, it's a question, so I'll let you comment at the end of the table.
Well, this area, by its nature, is pretty dynamic, and there will be issues that come up between council and mana whenua over development issues or whatever. So to anticipate what those are, you know, I could reel off a number of them that we deal with each week. But the point of this is to create a framework within which a relationship and a dialogue happens, a commitment of both parties to sort of, in good faith, participate in a discussion to resolve these things. That is the purpose of it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And just in addition to that, just reminding that the agreements are non-statutory. They're non-statutory agreements, and they're very high level, and it's just a demonstration of goodwill in terms of working together and having a chief-to-chief relationship.
Yeah.
Sure. I guess, through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, my concern is that there are potentially instances where there are conflicts, where a relationship might generate conflict with, say, the wider community, who might have concerns around the extraction of resources, around development of land that might be better suited for reserve, around a number of things. So my question just went to testing. The other question I've got goes to the mention of partnership, and that is mentioned in part of the documentation. So I don't want to second guess anything, but it would be useful to know what's meant by partnership. Are we looking at anything that's 50-50, or is that going to vary according to the nature of the contractual relationship?
We're not talking about partnership in the sense of, in if you like, a legal sense, beyond the notion in a treaty context. And to your earlier point, the fact is that this council has obligations, treaty obligations enshrined in local government specific legislation, and if you have a look at the treaty audit conducted by the IMSB, you will see specific recommendations around the need for relationship agreements that reflect that that treaty obligation, which we've reported on separately.
I've just been thinking about the comments and the questions that have been made around the table, and maybe this will add some clarity, I hope so. This is a three-way agreement. It's between the mana whenua, it's between the council, governing body, and it's between the local board. We could go through each iwi and devise a totally new framework for that relationship agreement. What they're trying to do under item 13 is say, here is a template that may work for you, but if it doesn't work for the local board, then an individual agreement, relationship agreement, would be devised. So this is not compulsory, and if there is not three-way agreement, then the negotiations would start again around where the common ground would be. So this is not something being compelled on people. It's simply to say, here's a good starting point. If you'd like to use that, fine. If it doesn't suit your purposes, then board by board, we might have a separate agreement. So I don't think it's incompatible with, I don't think we need to talk to the boards first to find whether everybody is unanimous around it. I think we've got a general sense from our representatives here that there is broad support for it, but no board will be compelled to enter into an agreement based on this template. It will be up to the board, and if the board has problems, then they'll come back and they'll negotiate between themselves, the mana whenua, and the governing body. Is that reasonably clear?
Yes. Yes.
Yep. Okay. Good. Well, we'll keep going. Councillor.
I had one other question.
Sorry. Councillor Walker.
And that's just around aspirations. And I see part J, where it mentions the role of council as a steward, and then K, the interests of all communities. And I'm just mindful that the council's got things that it's worked on that it's had significant buy-in, like, say, the Auckland plan and so on. I mean, these are things that drive us. Is it conceivable that we could give some consideration to mentioning some of the documentation that we've developed? Would that be relevant?
Are you talking about engagement for?
I'm talking about aspirations.
Oh, yes.
I mean, the aspirations that we've got that go to council's part are fairly waffly. Quite obviously, on the part of iwi, it's quite specific around treaty settlement, rights and interests of all mana whenua, and so on, principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and so on. I'm just asking the question around perhaps some expansion there.
Yeah. I think, Councillor, if I go back to what I've just said, it is general, you're absolutely right. But if the parties want to make it more specific, then it's open to the parties to reach that agreement. So you can't make it too specific if it's a template. A template is a general document, and it's up then to the parties to add meat to the bone if they so choose. Right, can I have Deputy Mayor Cashmore?
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. Rama, so we've got a high-level template, it's not statute, but it's a token of goodwill towards our varying iwi hapu to, as a starting point, as the Mayor's quite correctly pointed out.
Yes.
What discussions have you had with our iwi about the success and how they look at this template?
One iwi in particular that I've had a discussion with Waikato Tainui recently, they're very used to entering into agreements of this level with district council and regional councils. So they're very comfortable with entering into these high-level relationship agreements. What it does for them is allows them to identify their mana whenua interests at a local board level, at a regional level, so that for successive local boards and local board members and governing body members, it's already recorded who are the key people, mana whenua, that they'll be working with in their respective areas.
So, Mr Mayor, so the next stage of this would be the discussions having between local boards and local iwi in areas of local aspirations and regional aspirations, which would go back to each of the decision-making bodies pro rata. So we're not diving into that level of detail just yet. This is the high level.
High level.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Newman.
Rama, just to follow up, because the Southern Local Boards, 4 of the Southern Local Boards have been engaging in their own dialogue with mana whenua in recent years. So, and they've actually been funding that work themselves. They made the decision to do that. Are you aware that 2 of the 4 boards, at least in the south, haven't been participating in that process?
Yes, I am.
And you're aware that those boards don't necessarily want to and shouldn't actually be compelled to if they don't want to engage in that process?
That's right.
So am I to understand this, that the officers are comfortable in the event that, for example, some local boards in the south will want to develop their completely separate relationship agreement where they're not party to yours and they're going to go and write their own? You're quite relaxed about that, and there'll be no compulsion or pressure on those local boards to align with an organisational MOU or any variation of it?
With the mana whenua entity, that's that would be up to their decision whether or not they want to go into a relationship agreement, whether or not they want to use the template.
So you're fine if they want to opt out?
Yes.
It's
They may not be
entirely
ready.
up to the boards whether
Yes,
they
they might not be
sign.
ready
Their
at
prerogative,
this
that's
stage.
important.
And equally, I think mana whenua, some of them may not be ready,
Yep.
and they might
It
want.
goes both ways.
It goes both ways.
I think you're identifying the difficulty we have at a practical level. And apologies to people who weren't here in the last term. There was a very strong view put forward from the IMSB that these agreements should only exist at a governing body level, and that was totally unsatisfactory to quite a number of local boards. So we've asserted their place in the governance framework and the right to participate in this. Now, if some don't want to be there, then I don't think it's for us to say otherwise. We will respect that wish.
I think it's clear that we won't be compelling iwi to sign up to this. We won't be compelling ourselves to sign up with it if we're not ready in a particular case, or compelling local boards. It is a template. It's there for the use of those parties who will find it useful, and it's there as a foundation they can build on if they want to alter it in any particular way.